Good day, students. My name is Ishan Aslam. I teach business courses. So today we are going to discuss chapter 10 of international business. The topic is understanding emerging markets. The book that we are following is International Business: The New Realities by Tamer, Gary Knight, John Riesenberger. Okay, what we discussed in the previous chapter, that was chapter 9. We discussed regional integration. We discussed the level of regional integration that were free trade area, customs union, common market, economic union, and political union. And we also discussed some of the examples of regional integration. So the last one we discussed advantages and dilemmas of being a part of regional integration. It doesn't matter that whenever you are going to be a part of a successful regional alliance, you are going to have advantages. There are a lot of times, a lot of countries face dilemmas as well. So we discussed all these points in previous chapter. Okay, so what we are going to discuss in today's chapter, that is chapter 10, we are going to discuss the difference between advanced economies, developing economies, and emerging markets. What are emerging markets? What makes these emerging markets attractive? Assessing the true potential of emerging markets, risks and challenges of emerging markets. Right? What companies are going to face issues when they are operating in emerging markets. Let's see what is the difference between these three terms. Advanced economies. What are advanced economies? Advanced economies are post-industrial countries characterized by high per capita income. This is the very first key point. Highly competitive industries, second key point, and developed commercial infrastructure. That's the third key point, right? So advanced economies, or you can say in daily life, the word that we use for these economies is developed countries. For example, Australia, for example, United Kingdom, Canada, United States of America, Japan, right? So these economies are, you can say, well developed economies or advanced economies. Second one is developing economies. These are low income countries characterized by limited industrialization and stagnant economies. For example, African countries, or you can take Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Sudan, right? So these economies, we can refer them as developing economies. The third one is emerging markets. What are emerging markets? These are former developing economies that have achieved substantial industrialization, modernization, and rapid economic growth since 1980s. For example, BRICS. BRICS means this is the consortium of 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Right? So these economies are termed as emerging markets. Right? So if you see or if you search about economies, you are going to find another word that was or that is underdeveloped countries, right? So there has been some shift in definitions, right? So advanced economies or developed economies or developed countries. Second is underdeveloped economies, right? So now that underdeveloped economies has been shifted or has been termed as developing economies, and previously those who were developing economies are now termed as emerging markets, right? So there has been some shift in definition. So these three words are the new words, right? While if you're going to find, or if you're going to just put developing economies on Google, you're going to find a lot of countries who are emerging markets, right? So the definition that has been some recent changes. So these are the updated definitions, right? So underdeveloped economies is removed, right? So they have been rephrased with the term developing economies, right? So these are three categories of economies. What is the main difference between emerging markets and advanced economies, right? So you can see these economies BRICS, right, in which China, right, if you see the growth path of Chinese economy for the last 2 decades, right, you can easily imagine, or you will be asking yourself why we are not putting China into advanced economies, right? So one key factor is time, right? So there has to be at least 50 years or more than 50 years, right? It has to be a constant growth, right? So the economy can be stable, right? So you need to give time, right? And after a considerable amount of time, that emerging market, if it has shown considerable growth, right, a constant growth, right, and the infrastructure and the per capita income has been rising steadily, so you can later on term that emerging market into advanced economy, right? So the main difference between advanced economy and emerging market is time. You have to give that economy time to stabilize and to balance itself, right? So that's why we term United Kingdom, right? We term Canada, we term United States as advanced economies, we term Germany as advanced economies, because these are the economies who are from or who are post-industrial countries, right? So you can say right after, right around World War I or World War II, right? Or even before that, right? So these economies, they had industrial revolution, right? So the industrial revolution started from some of these countries, right? So it took a lot of time for these economies to stabilize and to give a consistent growth, right? So that is the main difference between advanced economies and emerging markets. Okay, now let's look at some of the factors which differentiates between advanced economies, developing economy, or emerging market. Right. For example, if there is a country and you want to ask yourself where I should put this country, right, before searching on the internet, right? So you can put that country, or you can gauge that country on these factors which are given here, right? And you can easily understand where that economy should be, or where that country should be placed, right? So there are some trade conditions. So very first trade condition is industry. So in advanced economies, industries are highly developed, right? So you can see a lot of multinational companies or a lot of developed uh, companies. They are uh, originated from these advanced economies, right? Simultaneously, a lot of other companies from other countries, maybe developing economy, maybe emerging market, they want to have one of their site unit, right, or a branch office in these advanced economies. Why? Because that is going to give them latest information, right? Or you can say they can access latest technology, or they can get hands-on on latest research and development that is being done in their sector, right? So the industry is very much developed. On the other side, in emerging market, it is rapidly improving. A lot of multinational companies, they are entering into these emerging markets. Simultaneously, the local companies who are already operating in these markets, they are also uh, growing at a very good pace. So both these sectors, international as well as local, they are contributing to the economy, and hence the industry is improving. While on the other side, developing economies, it is poor, right? So the industry is very poor. No international company or no good company, right, want to enter into this market. Why? Because of lot of factors: political situation, corruption, bureaucracy, right? Or you can say economic instability, right? So there are a lot of factors due to which industries in these developing economies are poor. Second, competition. In advanced economies, competition is substantial, right? So you are seeing a lot of local companies, that are originated from these economies. Simultaneously, international companies who have opened up their site offices or branches, right? And the new entrepreneurship, they are also emerging in these economies. So the competition is substantial, right? So the competition is very stiff in these economies. On the other side, emerging markets, it is moderate but increasing. Moderate means why? Because that the local companies operating in these economies, they are growing. Simultaneously, international companies are entering into these markets, so they are also increasing the competition in the market. While on the other side, developing economies, it is very limited, right? So whoever is operating there, right, so they are going to be facing very limited competition because the arena is open for them, right? On the other side, they have a very good opportunity because the competition is limited, so which gives them chance to have bit of a premium, or they can have an ability to capture the market, right? But on the other side, due to the poor industry or the poor landscape, right, so a lot of companies, they are really not interested to enter into these economies. Trade barrier: in advanced economies, trade barriers are minimal. Means if you would like to open up a company in these economies, you are going to have very less barriers in terms of documentation, in terms of approvals, in terms of or you can say licenses. When you want to have any business license, you are going to have proper government support, right? Which means the trade barriers are low, right? Or you can say, if we can have a general example, right? If you want to open up a company in advanced economy, it will hardly take 1 to 2 weeks, right? And you can start your company operations, right? Right after 2 weeks. Why? Because it took very less time to open up that entire operation, right? Or to complete that entire operation. On the other side, in emerging market, it is rapidly liberalizing. Means the government is interested to invite a lot of international companies so that they can come in their economy, bring foreign direct investment, right? So they are looking into easing up the process of starting a trade trade activity, right? So these are rapidly liberalizing. On the other side, developing economies, moderate to high, so the trade barriers are very high, or you can say moderate, right? In developing economies, because they are not really open, they are not really interested to invite a lot of international companies, right? So the trade barriers are a bit high. So again, if we, like we were having the example, or like we were discussing the example of opening up a new business, here you might take approximately 1 to 2 months, right, just to complete the documentation. Later on, the other activities, or later on the other procedure will start after that. So the trade barriers are high in developing economies. Trade volume. Trade volume in advanced economies is going to be high. Why? Because there are a lot of international companies working there, a lot of companies, a lot of customers are there, or a lot of company, a lot of countries, they have become hub, right, of trade, or they are routing a lot of trade activity to other countries as well. So the trade volume is high here. On the other side, emerging market is also high because local markets or local companies have started operating not only in the local market, but as well, but nearby markets as well. Just we can take the example from the previous chapter, right? So a lot of successful alliances, right, among countries are in the emerging markets. So not only because of the local landscape, simultaneously all those local companies, they are accessing the neighboring countries, right? So trade volume is going high from the local companies, and as well as the new entrants from other countries. The last one is inward FDI, right? So inward FDI means the foreign direct investment coming into your economy, right? So it is high in the advanced economies. A lot of trade and investment activities is going to be done in these economy. A lot of new companies are going to open up here in these economies. All the local companies, they are you can say expanding simultaneously, right? So a lot of international companies, just like I was saying, right, they are trying to open up one of their branches in these economies, so inward FDI is going to be high. On the other side, in emerging market, that is going to be moderate to high, right? So this is a time where the international companies, right, located in these advanced economies, they are now looking to diversify their markets, right? So simultaneously they are shifting some of their capital into these emerging markets because there is some potential, right, that they are looking at, or there are a lot of opportunities which they can tap, right? So the inward FDI is moderate to high, while in the developing economies, the inward FDI is low because no company is interested to come into these economies. So simultaneously, foreign direct investment is going to be low, right? So these are some of the factors, right? If you want to put any country, right, or you want to gauge where should I put this country into, whether it is an advanced economy, whether it is a developing economy, or whether it is an emerging market, you can gauge that country on based on these factors. Okay, now let's look at what makes emerging markets attractive, right? Why this word emerging markets is a word of current time. So there are few factors due to which these emerging markets are attractive to international firms. One is lucrative target market, because the local population or local citizens who are in these emerging market, they are starting to have employment, or their standard of living is increasing, right? So they are now demanding new products, or they are demanding new brands, right? So this market is now becoming a lucrative target market for multiple products, right? For example, there can be a one person, right, who is working as a carpenter. Just it's just an example, right? So he's a carpenter, right? He is earning the minimum wage that is being set by the local economy. Later on, because of one of the international company, they have opened up a manufacturing unit in that area, right, where he is living. So he got an employment, right, in that manufacturing plant, right? So his standard of living will start to increase. The minimum wage rate that he was getting previously, now he is going to improve, right? So simultaneously later on, when where he is going to have more disposable income, he is going to shift his uh, lifestyle to a better one, right? So he's going to look for new products to consume. So the target market is going to be expanding. A lot of new lot of class, maybe lower class, they are going to be shifting to upper lower, right? Or middle class is going to be shifting to lower upper, right? Or upper class is going to be shifting to upper upper, right? So the economy is expanding, simultaneously the citizens are also going to get benefit from these improvement in the economy. Second one is emerging markets as manufacturing bases, right? So you can see lot of companies who are who were located in these advanced economies, they started to look for cheaper factor of production, right? Because these advanced economies, just like in the definition of advanced economy, it stated high per capita income, which means that the local wage rate is going to be high, right? So the labor cost is going to be high, which is going to increase cost of product for that firm. So they are going to be started looking, or they are going to look for other countries where factor of production, especially labor, is going to be cheaper, right? So they are going to be shifting some of their manufacturing to these emerging markets, right? So they are going to have, so these markets are going to be the next manufacturing basis where these companies are going to set up some of their manufacturing in these countries, right? The third point is emerging markets as sourcing destination, right? So These economies, just like I was saying, a lot of companies, they have shifted to these emerging markets, right? So they are also going to look for new sourcings, new source of raw material. So they are going to be looking at around the markets, right? To have cheaper raw material or alternate raw material, right? So they are going to be simultaneously looking around the economy, right, or neighboring country for other sources of raw material. So these economies are also now going to be acting as sourcing destination. So you can see in a lot of countries there are buying hubs, right? So for example, in this Asia and Middle East, UAE, right, or Dubai is going to be termed as buying hub. So a lot of multinational companies, they have set up their you can say buying hubs or buying houses in that country, right? So they are going to be looking for raw material for nearby markets where they have set up their manufacturing bases. The fourth point is emerging markets as outsourced destination. It's not only manufacturing. A lot of companies, they are also going to be looking for to outsource a certain department in these countries, right? So you can see the example nowadays, call centers, right, which were diverted from those advanced economies to these emerging markets like India, Philippines, Pakistan, right? Now later on, not only call centers, finance, accounting, human resource, marketing, that is also being outsourced to these economies, right? So a lot of operation are being done in these countries. Why? Because factor of production, especially labor, is cheaper as compared to these advanced economies. Fifth one is growing middle class, right? Whenever you are going to gauge whether that country is improving in its in its uh, in its, you can say, trade activities, you can see you can see the status of middle class, right? If the middle class is increasing, that means the economy is prospering, right? So it means if when middle class is increasing, so a lot of people from lower class, they are going to be shifting into this class, right? So middle class is the class where the majority of the consumption of all the FMCG goods, that is fast moving consumer goods, and a lot of other perishable goods or luxury goods, that is going to be higher, right? So this is that class where they are going to be trying a lot of new brands, right? So this is a very lucrative area for a lot of international companies, right, to tap into, right? So in growing middle class is one of the barometers of emerging markets, right? The country shifting from developing economy to emerging market, that means the local population is growing or is shifting from lower class to middle class. Sixth one is PPP, that is purchasing power parity. So you can see that when evaluating the potential of individual markets, the managers often start examining aggregate country data, right, like gross domestic product, gross national income, etc., right? So the, or you can say reference currency, right, or parity, currency parity against the US dollar, right? So these are some of the barometers managers are looking into when analyzing the position of that economy, right? So one of the factors or one of the way to analyze a market is through purchasing power parity. What it is? It is an adjustment for price that reflects the amount of goods that consumers can buy in their home country using their own currency, right, and consistent with their own standard of living, right? So that is purchasing power parity, right? So for example, a person is earning 25,000 rupees, right? You can say either India or Pakistan, right? So the amount of goods that he can afford in that 25,000 rupees, you are going to directly compare the same goods, right, in maybe for example United States with equivalent uh, currency, right? That is equivalent to 25,000 rupees. So you are going to gauge what is the purchasing power parity between these two economies, right? Whether that consumer can afford more or less. So you can directly connect that example with a lot of people who are looking to migrate to these advanced economies. Why they are looking to migrate to these advanced economies? Because they think that earning higher earning an amount in these economies is going to benefit them in terms of extra spending power, right? So they are directly comparing their purchasing power based on their own country where they are currently living as against the new country where they want to migrate to, right? So this is the concept of purchasing power parity. So there is a one, you can say, one index that is being developed by economists, right? So they compared purchasing power parity with Big Mac, that is the product of McDonald's, right? So you can see McDonald's is available in a lot of countries, right? So they have analyzed the price of Big Mac in multiple countries, and they have directly connected that thing with purchasing power parity, right? So what this index do? This index first gather information about the price of hamburgers at McDonald's restaurant worldwide. It then compares the price based on actual exchange rate to those based on the purchasing power parity price of Big Mac to assess whether a nation currency is under or overvalued. Right. So here the reference point is going to be United States of America. Right. And you are going to compare the price of hamburger with respect to United States of America for the different countries. So some countries they are going to be overvalued, or some countries they are going to be undervalued. So for example here, based on this index, Switzerland is overvalued, right, to 60%. Their currency is overvalued by 60%, while on the other side Chinese currency is undervalued by 40%, right? So this is the example of Big Mac index that is comparing purchasing power parity in multiple countries through applying the price of Big Mac, that is the product of McDonald's. Okay, risks of emerging market, right? So just like we were discussing a lot of advantages of emerging markets, why companies are looking toward these emerging markets, simultaneously there are a lot of risks involved when they are entering into these markets. The very first is political instability. Just like there is political instability in developing economies, simultaneously they are not even out of the woods yet, right? So the political instability is still there, right? The government is trying to improve the operations of their proceedings, right? But still political instability is there, right? So the clashes between political parties, you are going to witness all these things, or you are going to witness news about government clashes or conflicts among political parties in these emerging markets, like for example Thailand or Malaysia, right? Or India, right? So second one is risks of intellectual property, right? So government, just like I was saying, government is trying to improve, but still there is a lot of miles to be covered, right? So intellectual property right, that is very important here in these economies. Infringement, right, or copying or counterfeit products are there, right? So a lot of local companies they are copying international brands, right? So and simultaneously they are copying or they are not really bothered about copyrights or trademarks, right? So risks of intellectual property right is there, and government is not really looking into solving these issues at current, because they are their focus right now is to develop the system, and they are going to, maybe they are going to later on down the road they are going to be looking into this aspect. But still for a lot of international companies their product is in jeopardy, to be copied to, right? Third one is bureaucracy, red tape, and lack of transparency is there, right? So in these economies, you are going to find corruption. In these economies, you are going to find the culture of bribe, right? You're going to find nepotism, right? You're going to find lack of transparency, right? So there are going to be issues when you are going to be when you are going to be interacting with the local government in these emerging markets. Fourth one is poor physical infrastructure, right? So the infrastructure is developing, but still it is poor, right? So for example, you are going to see the infrastructure in advanced economies, you are going to find it's going to be flawless, while you are on the other side developing economies very poor, right? Here in emerging markets it is improving, but still it has far way to go, right? So the physical infrastructure is poor, right? So for example, industrial areas, you're going to find a lot of damaged roads, right? Or there are a lot of infrastructure that is still need to be developed, right? So there are a lot of improvement in the landscape of the country. Fifth point is partner availability and qualification. Here in these economies, the chances of fraud, chances of going to a wrong partner, which can give you long-term damages in terms of financial losses, in terms of uh, market loss, right? Or you can say maybe you just we are going to take an example, right? You partnered up with a local company. Later on, they build the market for you, and they started a product which you can say is directly competing with your product, right? So they had their name in the market, so it took very less time for their product to capture your market share, right? So the trust issues are there, or the chances of going into fraud, right, are there in these economies. So partner availability is still a issue for all those companies who are looking for distributorship agreement or maybe franchisee, right? So they're going to find bit of a hard time looking for the right partner. Sixth one is dominance of FC. FC is family conglomerates, right? So these economies, just like I was saying, local companies, they have started to flourish, right? So all those local companies now they are going to be becoming big companies, right? Because they are continuously operating, right? And simultaneously they are tapping nearby markets. So the size of these companies is going to be increasing. So they are going to be your main competitors when you enter into these markets, right? So these family conglomerates now they have deep cash pockets, right? So they have captured a lot of market, they have share of heart, they have share of mind of the local consumers, right? For example, in India, Tata Group, right? In Pakistan, Nishat Group, right? Or you can say Walmart in US, right? So these are family conglomerates, right? So the international company who is going to enter into the domain, right? So they are going to find these local companies very you can say going to be direct competition, and they are going to find it very hard to compete with these established firms. Okay, right. So based on all these risks and emerging risks of emerging market, right? So now the question arises, how a firm who is looking to enter into these emerging market can have better chances of success, right? So how they are going to face all these consequences of all these risks, right, that are there in emerging markets, almost all of the emerging markets. So how they are going to ensure that the chances of success are high in these emerging markets, right? So the opportunity is there, right? The target market is increasing, middle class is increasing, purchase spending power is increasing, lot of the local citizens are having higher disposable income, right, at their disposal, right, and they are willing to spend that as well, right. But on the other side, these risks are posing a lot of challenge for these international companies, right. So I would like to ask all of you your suggestion. You can give the suggestion in the comment box that how the international companies they can have a better success rate in these emerging markets, right. So this brings us to the end of this chapter, right. So we are going to meet for the next chapter, right. So in the meantime, I would again ask you to subscribe this channel so that you are well aware of the upcoming lectures that are being uploaded. Thank you.